Sometimes the biggest opportunities in the NBA don't come from a team chasing a player. They come from a domino falling somewhere else, a move in one city that quietly shakes a star loose in another. And tonight, on the show, I watched Shams Charania trace one of those dominoes straight to the doorstep of the Golden State Warriors, and I had to sit straight up because the player it shook loose is a first-time All-Star, one of the most efficient scorers in the entire league, and he might be available for a fraction of what he's actually worth. So stay with me, Warriors fans, because this is a story about a chain reaction, a bargain hiding in plain sight, and a player who could give Stephen Curry exactly the kind of help he's been missing. Here's what Shams said, cutting right through the noise. According to sources, the Golden State Warriors have shown real interest in free agent guard Norman Powell. The 33-year-old sharpshooter, fresh off the first All-Star season of his career, potentially landing in the Bay to give Curry a second scoring punch for one more run. Norman Powell, in a Warriors uniform. Read that again, because if you understand how he became available, and you understand what this Warriors team has needed for years, you understand why this could be one of the smartest, most opportunistic moves of the entire offseason. And I'm here to walk you through the chain reaction that made it possible, because this is where it gets fascinating. Now, I already know some of you are going to bring up the money, the age, and the defense, and we'll get to all of it, because I always give you the honest version, but stay with me, because the fit here is the kind of thing that could keep a dynasty alive. Let me start with how Norman Powell even became available, because this is the detective part, and it's a great story. Powell spent this past season with the Miami Heat, and he was sensational. He posted the best numbers of his entire career, averaging well over 20 points a game on elite efficiency, and he earned the first All-Star selection of his life at 33 years old. He was one of Miami's most important players. Normally, the Heat would do everything to keep him, but then a domino fell. Miami pulled off a blockbuster, trading for a global superstar to headline their roster. And here's the catch. The thing that creates this whole opportunity, that massive move pushed the Heat right up against the hard financial limits of the league. Suddenly, the team that wanted to keep Norman Powell can't realistically afford to. As one prominent NBA insider put it bluntly, the Heat are likely going to lose their All-Star unless he takes a crazy discount, and he's probably gone. So through a chain reaction started by somebody else's trade, one of the best shooters in basketball is about to hit the open market. That right there is the crack in the door that changes everything. So now let me tell you exactly who Norman Powell is, because this is the part that should get you excited. Norman Powell is one of the most efficient and dangerous scorers in the entire NBA. We're talking about a guy who just averaged better than 21 points a game, on top of 3.5 rebounds and a couple of assists, while shooting right around 40% from 3 and knocking down nearly 3 triples a night. Think about how genuinely rare that combination is. High volume scoring with elite knockdown efficiency, and he did it as a first-time All-Star at 33. And here's the most important part for a team like the Warriors. He does it without dominating the ball. He's a deadly catch-and-shoot threat, a smart mover without the ball, a guy who thrives running off screens and attacking closeouts, and who can also create his own shot when the offense bogs down. He's also a battle-tested veteran with real championship experience, having won an NBA title earlier in his career. This is a proven, polished, plug-and-play scorer in the prime of his shooting life. So now let's talk about why this fits the Warriors so perfectly, because it solves a problem they've had for years. But first, let me give you the full picture of this player, because his story makes the value even clearer. Norman Powell is the ultimate late bloomer, and that matters. He came into the league as a second-round pick, the 46th selection, a guy nobody handed anything to. He had to claw and scrap for every opportunity, starting as a role player on a championship team in Toronto, then slowly, season by season, expanding his game. He went from a bench piece to a starter to a 20-point scorer, and now, finally, at 33 years old, to a first-time All-Star. Think about what that journey tells you. This is not a player who was gifted his talent and coasted. This is a relentless worker who has improved every single year through sheer dedication, and who just had the best season of his life at an age when most players decline. That work ethic, that hunger, that professionalism, those are exactly the traits a veteran laden contender wants. And here's the key for the Warriors. A player who clawed his way up from the second round doesn't show up demanding the spotlight. He knows how to fit in, how to sacrifice, how to play within a system, because he did it for years before he became a star. For a team built on culture and selflessness, that fit matters as much as the talent. Here's the situation in Golden State. We are in the final act of one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history. Stephen Curry is still magnificent, but the clock on his prime is loud, and the Warriors just missed the playoffs entirely last season. Their core is aging, and they have a glaring, long-standing need. A reliable second scorer who can take some of the offensive burden off Curry, and who can keep the offense afloat in the minutes Curry rests. For years, the Warriors' offense has cratered when Curry sits, because there hasn't been another consistent shot creator and scorer to lean on. Norman Powell is a direct answer to that exact problem, and here's why the fit is so beautiful beyond just the scoring. The Warriors run one of the most beautiful motion offenses in basketball, built on constant movement, screening, and off-ball shooting. Norman Powell is the perfect kind of player for that system. He's elite at moving without the ball, running off screens, relocating, and knocking down shots, which is exactly what the Warriors' offense is designed to create. And think about the gravity. Defenses already bend the entire floor to chase Stephen Curry. Now add another knockdown shooter who can punish them for it. You simply cannot help off both. And in the minutes Curry sits, Powell can be a primary scorer, finally giving the Warriors a way to survive those stretches. He's almost a custom-built fit for what this team needs and how this team plays. So now let's talk about how this would work, because this is the hard part and I won't sugarcoat it. The Warriors are operating in the most restrictive financial territory in the league, jammed up against the hard cap and the aprons that severely limit how they can add players. So they likely can't offer Powell a giant contract. The realistic path here is a mid-level type of deal, the kind of contract a contender offers a veteran who's willing to take less to chase a ring. And here's where the chain reaction helps again. Because the market for Powell may be softer than his talent deserves, and because his old team can't pay him, a discounted deal with a real contender becomes a genuine possibility. For a 33-year-old all-star who wants to win, joining Stephen Curry for one more run, even at a discount, could be exactly the kind of opportunity he values. The money is the obstacle, but the situation might just make it work. And let me hammer on the urgency, because it's what makes this whole idea so compelling for Golden State specifically. The Warriors just missed the playoffs. Let that sink in. With Stephen Curry, one of the greatest to ever play, on the roster, they watch the postseason from home. That is not a situation that allows for patience. Every single season now is precious. Another year of an all-time greats twilight that you cannot afford to waste. And the single most fixable thing that has held this team back is the lack of a reliable second scorer, the offense going cold whenever Curry rests or gets bottled up. For years, the Warriors have searched for that piece and come up short. Now, a first-time all-star scorer who fits their system perfectly might be available at a discount because of someone else's cap crunch. When you're racing against the clock on a legend's career, and the exact medicine you've needed for years suddenly appears on the market at a price you might actually afford, you don't overthink it. You find a way to get it done. The cost of missing this opportunity isn't just a worse roster, it's another wasted year of Stephen Curry, and those are running out. But I told you I'd be honest, so let's take the doubts head on, because they're real on this one. The first objection is the money and the apron, which we just covered. It's the biggest hurdle. The Warriors can't pay top dollar, so this only happens if Powell is willing to take a discount to win. But veterans chasing rings do that all the time, and the chance to play next to Curry is a powerful draw. Difficult is not impossible. The second objection is the age. He's 33, fair, but his game is built on shooting, not athleticism, and shooting ages beautifully. A 40% shooter coming off a career year is very likely to keep shooting at a high level. There's no sign of decline here, just a player at the peak of his scoring powers. The third objection is the defense. He's a 6'4" guard, and pairing him with an aging Curry raises defensive questions. It's real. But the Warriors have Draymond Green, one of the greatest defensive minds ever, to anchor things and cover for a smaller backcourt, and the offensive value Powell brings, especially solving the Curry rest problem, is worth that trade-off for a team desperate to maximize its window. And let me put the spacing into hard terms, because for this team, it's almost unfair. Defenses against the Warriors are already stretched to their absolute breaking point because Stephen Curry's gravity is unlike anything in the sport. They chase him over every screen, they send 2 defenders at him, they bend the entire floor just to slow him down, which leaves them scrambling and short-handed everywhere else. Now drop another 40% shooter into that chaos. The defense is already cheating toward Curry, which means Norman Powell is constantly going to find himself with a sliver of space, and a sliver is all an elite shooter needs. You cannot double Curry and also account for a knockdown sniper spotting up or running off a screen. It's a mathematical impossibility, and it works in reverse too. Respect Powell, and Curry gets even more room to work his magic. 2 elite shooters on the same floor don't just add up, they multiply, because each one makes the other more dangerous. That's the kind of spacing that takes a struggling offense and makes it terrifying again overnight, and it's precisely the medicine a team built on shooting needs to get back to contention. So let me tell you where my head is at, and then I've got one final thought that I think is the real key to all of this. If the Warriors pull this off, they finally solve their years-long problem of scoring without Curry, and they add an elite, efficient shooter who fits their motion offense like a glove, all potentially at a discount. Picture it, Curry and Powell on the floor together, 2 knockdown shooters pulling a defense in 2 directions, with the offense humming even when Curry takes a breather. Would it win a title? The defensive and financial questions are real, and that's the debate. But the offensive fit is spectacular, and for a franchise that owes Curry one more real shot, a bargain like this is exactly the kind of swing worth taking. And here's the thought I want to leave you with. The part almost nobody is connecting. The smartest front offices don't just react to what's in front of them, they watch the whole board. They understand that when a big domino falls in one city, it creates opportunity in another, and they're ready to pounce when a star shakes loose through no fault of his own. Right now, a chain reaction started by a blockbuster trade in Miami is about to push a first-time All-Star, one of the league's best shooters, onto the open market at a price below his true value. For a Warriors team out of time and desperate for help around Curry, a discounted perfect fit scorer is the kind of gift you don't pass up. The smart, hungry teams pounce on these moments, and the opportunity is sitting right there. So let me boil it all the way down for you, because I want this crystal clear. A franchise out of time with an all-time great coming off a missed playoffs with a years-long hole at second scorer. A first-time All-Star and elite shooter who fits their motion offense like a glove and solves that exact problem, and a price that, thanks to a rival's cap crunch, might finally be one a cap-strapped contender can manage. The apron is a real obstacle, and his age and defense are fair questions. But how many times in the back half of this dynasty have the Warriors wished a perfect fit shooter would fall into their lap at a discount? Now one might, and the only question is whether they're creative and bold enough to land him. Safe already got them a missed playoffs. When you owe Curry one more real shot, you find a way, and think about how rarely a fit this clean comes along at a price this low. The Warriors have spent years searching for a second scorer who fits their movement and shooting system, cycling through names and experiments and coming up empty. Norman Powell is almost a laboratory-built version of exactly what they've needed: an elite off-ball shooter, a self-sufficient scorer, and a selfless veteran who'd slot into their culture seamlessly. Players this perfectly suited to what you do, who are also actually gettable, come along maybe once in a window. Letting that slip away while the clock on Curry ticks louder would be the kind of regret a franchise carries for years. The bold teams don't let it happen. I'm not telling you it's signed. I have no reporting that says the ink is dry, and I am never gonna make something up for you, because the only reason you keep coming back to me is that I shoot you straight, even when the honest version is that the apron makes this tough, and his age and defense are real questions. Those things are true. But I am telling you, the talent is real, the fit with Curry, and this offense is spectacular. The value is real, and a first-time All-Star shaken loose by someone else's trade is a rare kind of bargain. And tonight, Shams Charania put the Warriors right into that conversation on national television. You stack all of that up, the fit and the value and the chain reaction that created it, and even with the financial hurdles, you can't help but want them to find a way, can you? So here's what I need from you. Keep your phone close over the next few weeks, because once free agency opens and the dominoes really start falling, these deals can come together in a matter of hours. Remember where you were when you heard this, because if it happens, you'll want to remember the night the Warriors finally solved the problem that has haunted them for years and found Curry his second scorer right when the window was closing. And tell me down below, do you do it? If you're the Warriors, do you use your limited tools to land a first-time All-Star at a discount for one more run with Curry? Or do you decide the money and the defense make it flat out impossible? I really want to hear it, because this one splits people right down the middle. The fans who say you do whatever it takes for Curry against the ones who think the apron makes it pure fantasy. Because somewhere in the Bay tonight, a front office that owes absolutely everything to Stephen Curry is staring at a genuine bargain, one created not by their own maneuvering, but by a domino that fell 2,000 miles away in Miami. And somewhere in Miami, a team that just landed one global superstar is quietly realizing it can no longer afford to keep the homegrown all-star it already had, and contenders everywhere are circling.